For the first time, Obama and Netanyahu set to go face-to-face in Washington, D.C. Ben Weinthal is a writer for the Jerusalem Post. In fact, he's live in Jerusalem this morning at their headquarters. He's also a research fellow for the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He lives in Berlin. He's a great guest, and we're going to go to him live in Israel on this big day right now. Ben, good morning. How are you, pal?
Good, Sid. Great to be on your show. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great. It's always great having you on. It's always a great conversation because it's always a very interesting topic. Let's get to this. Once again, these two guys have not been face-to-face and talking since the Iran nuclear deal, Netanyahu and Obama. So before we even get into the content and why they're meeting today, let's talk about how do you think the initial handshake will go between those two guys?
Well, it's their 16th meeting, 1-6. So they have a history here of exchanges, but as you point out, it's the first meeting since the nuclear deal that was reached on July 14th this past summer, and that was a huge fight, created a massive gulf between Israel and the United States on a huge policy issue that threatened the existence of the state of Israel. I think that Obama is not going to pick old battles with Bibi Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, and I assume that Bibi will also not want to walk down old territory. They're going to focus on common ground, new security arrangements, new funding for Israel's security budget to keep Israel's competitive edge, qualitative edge over its neighbors in terms of defense. And those will be, I think, the issues that are going to be front and center in their meeting. What
time is it right now, Jerusalem? I'm just curious.
It's now, what time is it? It's 2:36.
Okay, so you guys are 7 hours ahead of us. Is that right?
Correct.
7 hours. Okay, and you're at the headquarters right now in Jerusalem. I would hope, Ben, that you are wearing your new citizen T-shirt. Right?
Well, I did bring my citizen T-shirt to Jerusalem, and I'm going to wear it, and I'm going to put a post of the T-shirt on Twitter in front of somewhere in Jerusalem. I'm going to find a good area to take a picture.
The Wailing Wall. You got to go to the Wailing Wall.
That's a good possibility. I'll do a selfie there. That's a good idea. I'm going to be here until December, so I have enough time.
Oh, so you're literally staying, because if you don't know Ben, he lives in Berlin, but you're now staying not in Germany. You're going to stay in Israel for the next couple of months.
Yeah, until December 6th, I'll be here working and taking some time off as well for vacation.
Interesting date, December 6th. All right, so let's get, you talked about some of the issues that they'll be discussing, Obama and Netanyahu, in Washington today. And I guess if you're a critic of Obama, and I am, and specifically the way he's handled Israel, which is obvious, he's done a poor job there. But I guess Israelis must be happy to hear that Obama's kind of given up on making Palestine a state. That's got to be some good news for Israelis, yes?
I do think it's a good idea that Obama and Kerry have internalized the fact that there's not going to be any meaningful progress in the talks about the peace process talks. The gap, the rift is simply too wide right now. Israel doesn't have a meaningful peace partner. You've got a terrorist entity in the Gaza Strip, Hamas, recognized by the U.S. as a terrorist organization. In the West Bank, you have Fatah, the so-called moderate party run by Mahmoud Abbas, and he can't even rein in terrorists from his organization. And when we're experiencing a wave of terrorism right now here in Israel from Palestinians, and when Palestinians are killed by Israelis whom they're seeking to kill, he declares them martyrs. So that's the state of the peace process right now.
What about Syria? Because obviously they become a huge, huge player here. What about what does the United States expect from Israel with that country?
Well, Netanyahu, during his meeting with President Obama this morning in Washington, he's going to ask for an increase in defense aid from $3 billion to $5 billion.
And they'll probably get $4, right? In all likelihood, they'll probably meet at the middle and give them $4, right?
Hard to say. Because you mentioned Syria, and that's a pressing security issue for Israel, because you have, jihadis, the Islamic State on its northern border. You have al-Nusra. You have just a range of different jihadi groups. And then you have Hezbollah, the Lebanese terrorist organization, and the Iranians. So you have this motley crew of radical Islamic terrorists on Israel's northern border. And there have been missiles that have flown into Israel from the north. The question is, how can Israel better insulate itself from that wave of terrorism in the north? And of course, you have yesterday evening there was a missile attack, a rocket fired from Gaza, which Hamas controls in the south. That's Israel's security situation: missiles from the north, missiles from the south.
Jesus.
So one would hope that the U.S. government, the Obama administration, would realize that Israel needs $5 billion a year.
Yeah, it says in today's Washington Post, one U.S. official predicted the sides would settle for an annual sum of $4 billion rather than the $5 billion. And of course, it's not just $5 billion in one shot. To be completely accurate here, the Israelis are looking for $50 billion over 10 years. Yes.
Right. Because of the long-term security issues. I mean, the Obama administration has provided, aid increases for Israel's Iron Dome program, missile defense system that's helped blunt a lot of the missile attacks from Hamas. So on these, lower-level defense issues, which are critically important to Israel, Obama has provided aid. But again, on the macro issues, Iran's nuclear weapons program,
terrible.
He hasn't delivered. He's been a huge disappointment. And the Iranians are, of course, snubbing him right now and violating the agreement.
Everyone.
And Obama the other way.
Yeah, I know he does. I tell you, it's funny. I've never been to Israel. Just, I'd love to go. But I have family there. I have friends there. You're there now for the next 2 months. Ben Weinthal joining us live from the headquarters of the Jerusalem Post. It's about 2:40 in the afternoon in Israel as we speak. And my friends and family say they feel safer there than the Bronx. I mean, you just told me a story about missiles coming from the north last night, missiles from the south 2 nights ago, and yet anybody I talk to says they're never worried about their security in Israel. It doesn't really add up if you're here in South Florida.
Sid, I think it's an interesting point, because when I was in Israel in August, September, I stayed in Tel Aviv, and I was talking with many French Jews. And as you know, there have been jihadi attacks on French Jews that had killed 4 Jews in a kosher supermarket earlier this year, and other attacks. And
that was right after the Charlie Hebdo incident. That's right.
Correct. And the French Jewish couple told me they feel completely safe in Israel, even during wars, compared to their life in France. And I think that speaks volumes about the situation for Jews in Europe, and of course in the States. Chicago is significantly more dangerous than Israel.
It really is. It's hard to imagine, but it really is. Tell me, right on the border there in Israel is Sinai, and of course that has been, ISIS is there, we know that, and they took a plane down, we think they took a plane down at least a couple of weeks ago. It depends who you talk to, if they're the Russians, the Egyptians, or U.S. intel. So where are we right now? What exactly is going on in Sinai? How much of a stronghold does ISIS have, and what do you think happened to that airplane?
Well, the reports I've read suggest that, or investigators from the West, that the United Kingdom and the U.S. are 90% certain that a bomb caused the plane to crash and explode in midair. Israeli intelligence intercepted communications from the Sinai Peninsula that show an explosive was at work in terms of the Russian plane crash. The Israelis' interception system is very sophisticated, so I would not doubt their intelligence material. I just read that the head of the airport where this took place in Sharm el-Sheikh was fired.
He was.
Head of security. Mm-hmm. So that's an interesting development. The Egyptians are sort of coming out of a state of denial, because the president of Egypt, al-Sisi, was literally in a state of denial, saying that we don't know what this was about, and it was a defect. And that's how the Egyptians have acted in the past when there have been plane crashes. One of their pilots committed suicide in a plane off the coast of the U.S. in the late 90s, and the Egyptians said it was a mechanical failure when it was clear that the pilot was suicidal and he crashed the plane.
Yeah, I would say now that they've told these people these flights cannot fly over that area for a while. I'm not sure. Maybe they've reinstated that. I'm not sure. And they have fired. I believe this is not the only guy to get fired. That everything that they're doing says to us that this was above and beyond a plane malfunction. Right? I mean, you don't fire the guy if the plane malfunctioned.
Right. I mean, I would suggest that the tens of thousands of tourists there from Russia and Britain and other countries, they should plan their vacations in Israel. It's much safer.
Much safer. How many miles would you say you are right now from where that went down in Jerusalem? How many miles? I'm just curious.
It's a good question. We're probably, flying, it's probably 40 minutes.
40 minutes, okay. So you're pretty close. And over there, the resort, like you said, tens, thousands of Middle Eastern folks and European folks. That is a very, very popular resort, yes?
Yeah. I mean, there are 80,000 Russians who were stranded at the resort because Russia canceled its flights, which shows that, Putin, president of Russia, also believes that that there was that this was probably a terrorist act when you look at his actions. So you've got huge numbers of tourists there.
You're talking about the refugees. What did happen, by the way, all those folks 4 miles away, I believe, from your apartment in Berlin when they were running to Germany to get away from these countries? Whatever happened with all that?
Well, Germany is just in a state of utter disarray in terms of trying to absorb the migrants, and they're attempting right now, legislators, to sharpen the law to prevent, in terms of the asylum law, and to allow quicker deportations for refugees who are not entitled to asylum, for example, from safe countries like Bosnia or countries where there aren't severe military conflicts like Pakistan. But and they're also worried right now about refugees who want to bring over their families, whether that's going to be allowed because of the increased numbers. So there's heated debates taking place within Merkel's coalition right now. The only one who's really defied her is the head of the Christian Social Union, the party in Bavaria that's part of her coalition. He's threatened to sue her in court. His name's Seehofer. But that's been about it. She's been pretty much running the show, and it doesn't look like there's too much resistance to her in Germany.
So how do you think the Israeli people, again, you're in Jerusalem, you're at the headquarters, you are the pulse of the people there, Ben, whether it's Haifa, Tel Aviv, you got it. How do you think the Israelis feel today about Obama and Netanyahu, once again, face-to-face today?
Well, I think the Israelis don't, they're of the view that Obama really just doesn't get the Middle East. He doesn't understand the security concerns in the region. He doesn't understand the region, period. I mean, there have been seven people were wounded yesterday in Palestinian terrorist attacks, and a soldier just died, and a 19-year-old border police officer, an Israeli soldier, because of a terrorist attack, Bejamin Yakubovich, 19, just a kid, because of a car ramming terrorist attack by Palestinians.
Jesus.
And I
did see the lady got shot in the West Bank. There was a stabbing and a shooting there. They've been playing that quite a bit here on American television.
Yes, the video of her. She's seriously wounded, the Palestinian, but the security guard, thankfully, was severely injured. One can watch that video. You're right; it's all over the internet. So I think Obama's view. He's very unpopular here in Israel right now because he just doesn't, as I said, he doesn't internalize what's really happening here from Washington. And he's misjudged the Middle East on so many levels. Syria, when he pulled out, and when the Assad regime used chemical weapons, he said, "I'm going to fire missiles in 2013 into Damascus to knock out Assad." Then the last minute, he pulled out because and everyone lampooned him because he said, "If you cross my red line with missiles, with chemical weapons, we're going to knock you out." So at that point in 2013, the Israeli public shifted, and I was here in 2013 because I wanted to go to Syria and Turkey to cover the missile firings, and because it didn't happen, I went there to cover the refugee crisis instead and terrorism. But that was the defining moment. So I think Israelis now view him as just not serious.
He's lost. And so it's been 2 years, and they've never come back to him. Finally, here in the United States, Donald Trump, Ben Weinthal, hosted SNL on Saturday. It sucked, by the way. I don't care what anybody tells you. I know you trust me more than anybody. It sucked. But I would imagine even in Israel, people got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, didn't they, to watch Donald Trump on Sunday morning, didn't they?
Yeah, he's, certainly for the Anglo-American crowd here, for Americans who have made Aliyah, that is, who've emigrated to Israel, he's quite an attraction. So my colleague here, it's interesting that you just mentioned that, Sid. My colleague here at the Jerusalem Post, Dan, I was in the newsroom, turned to me and said, is Donald Trump going to win?
He just said that?
And so my colleague here in
If Donald Trump wins, I'll be making Aliyah with you. I'll be living in Haifa next week. You can tell Dan, you can write down the Jerusalem Post today. Sid Rosenberg back in America says he's going to Aliyah if Donald Trump wins. Hey,
well, Haifa would love you, Sid, because Haifa is the only city in Israel that actually has an underground subway.
I know that.
You're from Brooklyn.
That's right. That's right. It'd be close to home.
Exactly.
And it's on the water. I like the water. I like the sun. All that stuff. So Haifa works well for me. Hey, I love you. This was a great report today, and thank you, Ben. Keep up the great work, and we'll talk again real soon. This was great. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Sid. Take care.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Sid. Take care.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.